Filmed live in front of a live studio audience, it's the Game of the Year special edition of the Dicebreaker podcast with your host, Matt Jarvis.
Wills, we're not live this time.
No, I know, but that's what we say.
I mean, we're live right now.
We're live right now.
Audience.
We are pre-recording this because obviously when this goes out, it will be the Christmas break.
Yeah.
So Merry Christmas, one and all.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Yeah.
Whatever
you celebrate, have a lovely
enjoy
time.
I suppose studio audience, if my cat counts,
Yes.
then it's a live audience. Yeah.
Yes.
She will cheer from the sidelines and also snore. Hello, it's the Dicebreaker podcast. We're not here right now. Please leave a message, and we'll leave you this special podcast where we're just going to chat about some of the games we played this year. By now, right now, this second, there should be a video on the Dicebreaker YouTube channel of our favorite games of 2021. And potentially those articles might also be up on the website, depending on timings. If not, they'll be there very soon. But of course, there are a lot of games, and there are only so many games we can talk about in the space of a list or a couple of articles. So we're here to just kind of chat about what you've played this year, some of the highlights, some of the lowlights potentially. But it's a little bit more informal than our list. It's a little bit more informal than the articles we put up. So if you want to go and read those, go and read those. But let's just chat about what we've played this year. I am, as ever, joined by the wonderful Dicebreaker team. Liv Kennedy, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Matt Jarvis.
Alex Meehan, thanks for joining us.
It's great. Just imagine I'm kicking back a cup of mulled wine.
Mm-hmm. Big fan of the Christmas tree in the background, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's got a decoration on it that was made by my friend. Instead of a star on the top of the tree,
That's very
it's
sweet.
it's a Christmas Zagreus instead.
I was hoping it would just be you, just like the star you are, obviously.
Yeah, Zagreus
Well,
is a star, to be fair.
He is a star.
A shining
but,
star.
Funnily enough, my mum has an angel she puts on the tree that she's named after me. And
Aww.
apparently the characteristics of this angel are a drunken lout who apparently it always gets lost in the box and is generally mischievous. So I'm glad that...
Lot to live
Yeah,
up
I
to.
know. I was like, thanks for naming her after me, Mum. She's like, oh, it's not
Thank you,
actually
Mum.
you.
Of course, as well, rounding out our cast this week.
I'm
Michael
also
Wills-Whelan.
here. Hello.
Yes. Shall we
Well,
get stuck into it?
Yeah.
Because it's a slightly shorter podcast than usual because we're quite busy preparing end of the year content right now, including our game of the year list.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a slightly shorter podcast, but we hope that it will just give you kind of a window into what we've played this year and what stood out. So does anyone want to throw a game into the discussion?
I will say, as is becoming my sort of shtick here on the Dicebreaker team, I'm the person who puts an RPG in the Game of the Year's list. And for this one, as you will see from the video, if you've already watched it, I selected Heart by Grant Howitt and Rowan Rook and a Card. It is a very, very good RPG, which has deservedly gotten a lot of praise this year. But to highlight a much more indie offering, which went live as part of Zine Quest, but arrived this year, was Lay on Hands, which is a very, very, very cool post-apocalyptic like preacher solo RPG in which you're playing this sort of like healing figure who is like wandering the wastes, which is from, I believe, a brand new designer, which is very cool as well. But the visuals are absolutely stunning. It's like a very, very cool setting, and also it uses a coin spinning dexterity mechanic to do its conflict resolution. So the way it works is, I've got it in the other room, I should have brought it down, but the way it works is you have like this little printout, almost like a Beyblade arena, which you like, you fold up the little 2D walls into like, make it into a little free tray, and then you spin a coin, and you've got until that coin stops spinning to sort of fill out, almost like a Captain Sonar style, like, follow the line kind of track to get to your result. But when that coin falls, like if you didn't get there, then you failed, or if you did, then, that's your result. But also the coin will fall onto an oracle because it's like a grid of prompts of like tarot style things to think about when you're doing your prompts. So it's a very robust mechanic, despite it seeming very gimmicky. And it's an absolutely gorgeous book. It's got like this style where the designer who was also the graphic designer for it has like done pinprick like art into like foam. So if you almost like polystyrene, not polystyrene, sorry, what's it called? Is it polystyrene? What's the white stuff that you pack boxes with?
Yeah, that's polystyrene.
Yeah, polystyrene. He's like pinpricked into it to make like a sort of, almost like dot printed comic book style art book. But then use that as a stamp to make this like black and white imagery where the detail is the white dots where the paint doesn't sit because it's been printed in. If that makes sense. It's a very like, I've not really seen much like it in the RPG space. It looks absolutely fantastic. Apparently it was very time consuming to do, but also it looks great. But yeah, I wanted to give that a little shout out because I think that was a close contender. It was one of the sort of like better indie offerings this year that I've played. But in general, I like, whenever you get to the end of the year and you're just like, whoa, what have I played this year?
Oh yeah, especially this year.
Right now.
Yeah, this year has been a little bit tricky. And also, I didn't make it to Essen with you lot, so I missed out on some of the tasty board game offerings. But yeah, but that's one that I wanted to bring to the table. Let's cycle this around, Matt. I'll hand over to one of the other squad.
Yeah. Anyone got something they want to throw forwards? Just giving it a little shout out.
Well, as people will see from the video that's definitely out now, my game of the year was Lost Ruins of Arnak, which I throw my hands up, technically came out last year.
It was
pretty late in the year.
It was pretty close.
Late, yeah.
December 20th.
I mean, come on.
That's as close as you get, really.
That's basically the end of the year.
They're already pretending Jesus is alive at that point, like.
I mean, it's not even early enough in December to really get it as a Christmas gift, to be honest. Like, so it's a bit of an odd release date. But I'm counting it as 2021. And if anyone's got a problem with that,
let us know in the comments.
Meet me in the Dicebreaker car park if you want an ass fucking.
I won't be there. Okay, so the reason I picked this game, obviously you can watch the video for a more sort of structured essay-like perspective on why this game is my favourite game of the year, or you can even read the article that may or may not be out. But in a more casual approach, this game just ticks so many boxes of things that I like about board games that it's almost impossible for me not to have picked it as like my game of the year. I mean, I didn't get to play a lot of the really big releases this year myself, so I played Oath once, and it was great. I won, so.
You're the forever ruler of that particular empire.
Yeah. And knowing us, we're probably never going to go back to it. So I am the official ruler of that realm. And I do love the ideas and the design. And obviously, Culverley, anything that man creates is pretty great. So, and I didn't get to play Descent, which is kind of the other really, I'd say, big release of this year. Although we've got about 1 million copies now, so the only thing that's really holding you back is just time and someone else to play with, which is basically the kind of theme of this year.
Yeah.
Of half of it being in a pandemic, or well, technically all of it, but half of it being lockdown, and then the other half just struggling to kind of find time and people to play with. But somehow I managed to find opportunities to play Lost Ruins of Arnak, which is a debut title from a husband and wife duo, which is adorable. And I actually met Elwyn at Essen, and I was like, "Your game slaps," and they were like, "Oh, thanks."
Is that word for word what you said?
Yeah, basically. I mean,
fair enough.
I mean, to him, I was just some weird random woman who come up to them and was talking about their game. But essentially, what it is, it's what I like to call, and Matt Jarvis is going to die immediately as I say that. It's what I like to call a deck building hybrid, which is now my new attempt to introduce a new genre into the world of board games. I'm determined that I'm going to end up with my own dictionary. But this is what I describe as like a game that has deck building elements. It's maybe its main description is deck building, but it's a lot more than that. So when you think of a standard deck building game, you think of something like Dominion, which is like your box, your baby's first deck building game.
Yeah, suck it, Dominion nerds.
I like Dominion. I defend Dominion, but it is very much just deck building. Like, that's all it is. Whereas Lost Ruins of Arnak combines deck building with resource management and basically efficiency, which usually would turn me well off because as someone who self-confessed finds Eurogames scary and I suck at them. Lost Ruins of Arnak just manages to overcome that hurdle, where the premise of the game is you're exploring this mysterious island, and you're sort of searching for, you're archaeologists, you're searching for secrets and treasures and all those sort of things. I will say the artwork for the game is incredible. Like, I love the front cover of it so much. Like, the way that man is drawn is just like, I'm in love with this man. Like, this man is a wonderful, and he's got like other archaeologists there, and it just really evokes like this feeling of,
wow, poor other archaeologists.
Yeah, well, you know,
a footnote in this man's life story.
It manages to take what is a game that's kind of very, it's not dry in any way, but like it has elements of, okay, I hope you like planning ahead and organization, but it creates such an evocative image that you still get swept up in the, oh, I'm going on an adventure, like I'm fighting these enormous creatures, I'm finding all these incredible discoveries. But at the heart of the game, it's very much, and I say this in my video, like my Game of the Year pick, it is just a game about exploration in every single element. Like, the theme is about exploration, but also the game itself. Every time you play this game, you're discovering something new about it. And like, it's incredibly deep mechanics, and its random elements basically allow this to happen. So the first time you play it, you know, if you're me, you're an idiot and you don't really know what you're doing, and you're kind of like, well, I think I know what happened there, but I don't quite understand. But then every time you play afterwards, you're like, oh, like, this is a viable option for me to take with winning this game. But because of the random elements in it, there's never one set way of winning every time. It will always be different, because I don't like Euro games, where once you've optimized the strategy pretty much, that's it. Like, and some people love that because they hate random elements, and I'm like, do you just play a game like a few times and then never play it again because you basically mastered it? Whereas Lost Ruins of Arnak is like, you're never going to do that because of the random elements. So you have a hand of cards that you use to do various actions. You know, you travel to different dig sites and you unearth these idols that get you points, but in order to get them, you have to fight these fearsome guardians. But you do that providing resources. Or you could go down this research track where you have to pay certain resources to get further and further up it. And the higher you get up it, the better rewards you get. Or you require these tools and artifacts that give you points as well, because you get points from your deck. So the main aim is to get as many points as possible, but the way you do that is whatever way you kind of want to. But it's very much a game that teaches you trying to do a bit of everything is going to get you absolutely nowhere. Like, you have to focus on one or two pathways in order to really score. And like, I played this game multiple times and I have never seen anyone make it all the way to the top of that research track, for example. Like, and I've only seen it a few times. People make it all the way to the furthest dig site and get the better rewards from that, because they don't quite know how to do it yet. But then once they've played enough, then they know how to do it. But then that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end of playing the game. You don't bother with it because you've mastered it. You still haven't, because there's always those random elements to keep things fresh. So it's just one of those fascinating games that I've grown to love over this year. And I realized I love games like this, where they're just puzzles that you're like picking apart. And every time you play it, the better you can kind of put those pieces together and really feel rewarded, because you feel really satisfied when you get a great score. And then it also added the expansion this year, Expedition Leaders, which is really good. And it adds so much content to the game. It's incredible. Like, you get so many of these expansions that, oh, there's a few more cards and here's some resources, or here's some extra scenarios or something. This like fundamentally changes how the game works. Like, it adds these playable characters who have their own unique abilities, each one of them. And these abilities almost turn the game into an asymmetric experience, where depending on which character you play, you'll be approaching things entirely differently. So like, I played as this woman who kind of comboed off getting resources and gaining more money from doing that. And then my friend was playing as this person who had like a hawk that they could use to scout out ahead. And every time they move their hawk, they get better rewards if they bring them back. So it's like two very different approaches to the game. But then, of course, because of the way that our characters work, we went for kind of different things. So I went for pathways that required more resources, because I was like, oh, I can get resources a lot easier than everyone else. I didn't bother with the exploration as much because it didn't benefit me so much. It also adds like a completely new mode to the game, which the game moves with the staff that moves across each round, and then this mode changes the way that staff works with how some of the cards are drawn. It also adds a completely new research track as well that can be flipped either side. The fact that they included so much content in just an optional expansion is fantastic.
So is the expansion to Ruins of Arnak your sort of, not follow up, what's the word? Runner up game of the year to Lost Ruins of Arnak?
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, like, the game works without it. But I honestly think it's a better game with the expansion. Like, because it just improves because you know me, I love asymmetric elements. To me, it just improves, like, the whole joy of Arnak is seeing which paths people take and how those are different paths. And this expansion just pushes you even more in that direction of taking the different paths. And I'm just I believe there is more content scheduled to come out for the game next year, and I'm just really excited to see what they put out. That'll be my game of the year for 2022. But it really is just that good, and I'm so glad that people were talking about it and I was seeing it pop up. It's definitely a popular game of this year. Like, when we were at Essen, Czech oh my gosh,
Czech Games Edition.
Yeah, Czech Games Edition were there, and they were selling copies along with the expansion. And everywhere you looked in Essen, I just saw a copy of Lost Ruins of Arnak just popping up. It was like, where's Wally? Like, I think it's just a really hot release this year. And sometimes those kind of releases can be like, like it's the done thing. It's by this designer, it's by this creator, whatever. But like, this is a debut title from this like these two designers. It's got none of that kind of clout. Sure, it's from Czech Games Edition, like, and their games are often popular, but this isn't like Codename. It's a big chunky, thing that takes forever to set up. But I think it just, word of mouth has just spread so much, and that's kind of like how I found out about it, and I'm so glad because it slaps so much, and I still want to play it all the time. And I'm excited to see what else comes out for it. Other shout outs that don't really count for this year, but I'm just going to say anyway. Quacks of Quedlinburg, I discovered this year. Not literally discovered, I played it for the first time this year. Oh my god, that game is so good. Like, I bow down to you, Lolies, previous member of Dicebreaker.
I was going to say, I'm Liv.
She doesn't even go here.
You know, like they hyped this game up a lot, and I was kind of like, oh, is it going to be that good? And it's so good. Like, it's just one of those games that I would happily play over and over again. It's just really great. So yeah, love that. I think I really also got into Terraforming Mars this year, which slaps. What else have I played this year? Avatar RPG, which technically comes out next year. But that game is
out.
that RPG is so good, and it just understands the source material incredibly well, and it's just a lot of fun to play. And honestly, it might have created one of the best campaigns I've ever been a part of, like, ever. Some of those role-playing experiences and, like, genuinely emotional experiences. Like, I've never been able to cry during an RPG before, but, like, one of the sessions actually did that to me. Like, I think it's just the power of the IP and that the fact that the game understands it so well. I think that's everything, really. Big thumbs down to Critical Role's Ukatoa, which was such a letdown.
That is a shame.
Sad times.
Yeah.
I can't really say that I was expecting anything more from it, to be honest.
Well, I was. You know, like, it looked good, and it once again, like I said, it doesn't feel like a game that was half-heartedly made or rushed out. It just feels like a game that fundamentally doesn't work. And whoever designed it, I'm just like, why didn't you make something more accessible and simple? Why did you have to make this? Like,
why didn't you make this game fun?
Yeah.
Have you tried making this? Good.
Liv witnessed it.
I played it. Yeah, no, it's not great.
It's not great.
But just like, the majority of the evening was spent arguing over the rules, just kind of like, no, it must mean this, no, it must mean that. No,
those are the worst. Those are the absolute worst.
Yeah.
Well, Liv, I mean,
Liv.
Yeah, let's throw over to you then. What was your?
All right.
I mean, Meehan spent most of that talking about her game of the year, but let us know your runner-ups.
That's kind of this is also the point of this podcast. Like, it's a more casual discussion about our favorite games of this year, which I talked about. Liv.
Okay,
tell us.
Runners up. Yeah, well, I mean, Matt, you feel free to jump in with me on this, but I would say Descent is probably up there. Descent Legends of the Dark, which I was really excited to play because I just like the whole idea of the basically GM-less like playthrough. That is, it's a very kind of like RPG experience, but like kind of, well, more of the combat, I will say, aspect of that. But yeah, just like being able to just set up the app and then just being able to like run with it and not have to think is really nice. And the design is beautiful. I really like just like the setup of it, and like the fact that it's interactive as well. Like I know this is probably like the nerdiest thing, but just like being able to set up the little assets of it and like make the little rooms and stuff like that and make the little set pieces. That was half the fun for me. I really enjoyed it.
It is super, like, as that stuff comes together, I think it is like, it's more than the sum of its parts in many ways, because if you take like just parts of it, it's like, oh, it's a dungeon crawler, oh, it's kind of like this fancy world that's kind of it's not super generic, but it's relatively in those realms. You know, you've got like your alpha likes, you've got dragons, but when it all comes together, like you say, like as you're putting together these like 3D environments across multiple levels of stairs, it's like, oh wow, this is like, even the setup is kind of fun.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, I know we've tried to film a playthrough a few times, but the Dicebreaker studio does not like Descent, but eventually we'll get there. But yeah, like just like building it and like maybe having. I can't wait to play it again, knowing that I will have the space to do so, because like it builds out so quickly, and then you have to kind of like catch up and stuff. But yeah, no, it's really, I really enjoyed that. Like
those kind of games are such a nightmare to film as well, because you don't know where to start. Because you've got, when you first look at it, you've just got like this big blank table which looks awful, and then as you build it out, it starts building off camera, so you start having to like shift things around.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. Was it me and you, Matt, when we tried to give it a go?
I think so, yeah. And we had to do what when I was reviewing it, what I had to do then as well, which is like kind of shift things and be like, okay, this is connected here, but we can't build off of the table, so just pretend, you know. And then you're like trying to keep this like mental map of where connects to where, because you can't do it exactly as it shows on the, unless you have a perfectly square table that lines up with their arrangement on the screen.
Yeah, I know exactly. I also enjoy, because I mentioned the GM list thing, like oftentimes when there is a GM, you feel like they might be picking on you or something when they like attack your character, but it's literally the game's like, oh, is that one closer? Well, whoever is the closest gets attacked, and it's like, okay, cool. I have no one to be mad at. That's great. That's on me. Shouldn't have got close. Yeah, they'll have like a preferred character to attack, but it's literally just the system saying it. So it's like, this is chill. This is nice, mostly. But yeah, like, yeah, no, I would say that's up there for me. Descent, I think it was really good. Just kind of piggyback on the whole, like, I didn't come out this year, but I played it this year. Me and Chloe have been getting super into Last Bastion, which came out in maybe 2019.
Which is a reimagining of a game which is even older.
Yes, it is. Reimagining those stories. Yeah, which I kind of really went into because of our difficult punishing board games list that is on the channel right now. And it's so bad. Matt just like, yeah. Yeah, no, it's a lot. I didn't think it would be that difficult, but it really is. So the goal of the game is to defeat a bunch of different monsters before you get to like the warlord monster, and that one is like really big and tough, and you have to it's really tough to beat. We've gotten a glimpse of the warlord monster once. When it just kind of like you have like a deck of the cards, and you have to get through like 40 different monsters before you get to the warlord. And the only way we managed to do that is because we realized that playing with two people is not conducive to winning. So we had to play two characters each in order to like manage to kind of like get to that point. But yeah, and we didn't even beat it then. And like it's one of those games where like you'll be playing and there's so many like different rules to keep track of, but it'll be like, oh no, we've lost. If you look at that means that we've lost because there are 3 things here and blah blah blah. We're like, oh, okay, let's start again.
I've had that a lot of times where you're just like, you're spending like 10 minutes trying to work out, oh no, if we do this, we can just, oh no, we didn't do that. We didn't put the bins out, so, you know.
No, exactly. Like it's one of those games as well where you're just like, well, I know that in the next turn we're dead, so do we stop here or do we just see it through and let it happen? But yeah, no, that was pretty good. And my game of the year, just to throw it in there, is Unfathomable, which we played on the channel the other day. You can see that live stream on the channel now. But yeah, it's basically kind of another. Well, it was based on Battlestar Galactica, which was a game a few years ago. I don't know.
It's old, yeah.
Quite old,
yeah. Reimagining of that. I love reimaginings. I love it. It's
everything old is new again.
It's just Hollywood, but board games.
I love it when things are derivative.
Well, the fundamental difference here is that trying to get a copy of Battlestar Galactica, the board game,
100%,
is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. So them reinventing it as this, unless you're really attached to the theme, like this is just another way for you to get your hands on that game. So I think reimaginings in the board game space, I think, unless they're really
Yeah,
bad,
100%,
are
100%.
perfectly viable.
Fair play.
Liv,
Yes.
tell us about Unfathomable.
Well, don't mind if I do. I'll keep it brief because I'm going to be explaining it more coherently when I actually write it up. So basically, it's like if you've played like Eldritch Horror or anything, it's by Fantasy Flight. It takes place in like the Cthulhu space.
The Arkham Files.
Horror.
Arkham Horror Files.
Arkham
yeah.
Horror Files, yes. As
That
we all
Cthulhu
know.
space, whatever.
Matt and I know,
Yeah.
because we have to write it all the time.
Takes place in that world, and basically it's like like if you play I play Eldritch Horror a lot, and there's like if you like face Cthulhu, you have a bunch of deep ones crawling about and doing all sorts of nonsense in the sea. It's basically like a zoom in on like one of those little like missions that you have to take care of and get rid of the deep ones because they're crawling aboard the ship. You have Mother Hydra, Father Dagon.
Not Daddy Dragon.
Daddy Dragon. Whichever you like. You prefer. And yeah, so basically you have to ensure that they do not sink the ship and damage it beyond repair before you get to, is it Boston?
I don't know. Actually,
Yeah.
we were just
Somewhere.
traveling. We were just
Yeah.
like, good lord, I hope
On
we end up somewhere.
Yeah. Basically before you get to the land. But yeah, so it's like there's a bunch of like mechanics where you have to do skill checks in order to like not face dire consequences. Mostly it doesn't really help you, it just kind of gets you through the day. And you have like aspects that are magical, like you have the Keeper of the Tome who will have to try and like cast spells in order to banish the deep ones from the deck, which really helps out. And also one of the main mechanics of the game is that there is a hidden role mechanic. So basically there is maybe from the start, but at least from halfway through, there is going to be a traitor who might be trying to goof you up. So like halfway through the game, there's the awakening phase, and then somebody is going to be a traitor from that point on, which is kind of rough on the traitor, I'm thinking. Yeah, but
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah.
I think it's tough when you're the only traitor, and it's gotten, by the time that we did get to the point where I became a traitor, we kind of got into the rhythm. We kind of got into the rhythms enough of the game that it was a lot. If we were in a more dire situation, then I think it would have been a bit easier to push us towards towards the heroes losing.
I do.
And there was like a fundamental turn.
Yeah.
Where if I had the right hand of cards, I could have potentially just won the game right there and then. But because I did not, it kind of meant I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I do think there's like it's almost like a reimagining of what you see in Dead of Winter, where it's like there could be a traitor, but you don't know.
Yeah.
Because one thing that I said before we started setting up for the session, because that was the first time me and Meehan played it, was that the thing I hate the most about that mechanic is the fact that it's so like anticlimactic when there isn't one, because you're just like, well, nothing's gone wrong for the past four turns, so I'm guessing we're fine, like.
The way that I play Dead of Winter is I always put a traitor in.
Yeah.
Because it's just fundamentally a better game
100%.
with a traitor.
Yeah.
Like, Dead of Winter slaps, but it really slaps when you've got a traitor in it, because that game it's similar to like Unfathomable, that feeling of Unfathomable Live, isn't it? Where it's like, we're up against it. And having a traitor only makes it.
Yeah.
But the Arkham Horror File games are so good at that. And the thing is, I don't know much about Battlestar Galactica. I know Edward James Olmos is in it. And I think a woman from it was in Mass Effect 2. Was she Miranda?
I know it gets referenced in The Office.
Yeah.
That is my extent of knowledge of Battlestar Galactica, which I'm sure there are people absolutely seething about, but that's fine.
The theme didn't do much for me with the game itself, like when I played it, but the way the game works is really good. And I think putting it with this Arkham Horror Fee only helps it. Yeah. Because Arkham horror file games really thrive when the gameplay mechanics work with the theme of oh no.
That is such a good descriptor. Before we jump into what you have to say, Matt, I also love that because obviously hidden role games are very cutthroat, and somebody might walk away from the game feeling a bit bummed out. With this one, at the very least, it makes it so you aren't really allowed to accuse people of being the traitor, and everyone has like a good ample time to like look at their cards, so nobody can be like caught out. And like it does everything it can to make sure that the traitor is not going to be persecuted outright. I don't know. So yeah, that I really enjoyed.
There were some nice considerations, like I think the one you're referencing there, it's the human or traitor card at the start, right? Where it's like, because the human card is just like, you're a human. So like you could just be like, all right, cool, red. And then everyone knows that, but if you're brand new to the game and you've got this big log of text because you're the traitor, then it kind of stands out. So they they sort of mechanicalize or mechanize, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
Like making sure that you're all looking at it at the exact same amount of time, like giving you as much of a chance as possible, basically.
I do think it's a game designed to be played with more players.
Yeah.
And it works really. I imagine it would work really well with that. And also, I do think there are lots of opportunities, regardless of when you become the traitor, to try and mess things up.
Yeah.
So I think it is balanced well.
And we didn't do the reveal thing as well. You can reveal yourself for extra power and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, you can as an action you can reveal as a traitor. So that's fun.
Yeah, and then you can just straight up go ahead and fight people, which is fun.
Yeah, I guess that undoes that typical thing as well, where it's like in a lot of social deduction games or hidden role games, once someone kind of gives up the ghost, it's like, oh, okay, well now we just need to get through the rest of this.
Yeah.
But when there's a genuine benefit to that happening, and it doesn't just mean like, oh well, we've still got 6 more rounds, but we kind of know.
It gives you an extra chance after people have worked it out, because then you can be like, all right, well look, everyone knows, so I'm not going to get here for espionage, so I might as well just get a shotgun out.
Let's go.
The worst they can do is just like throw you in the brig, and you can break out of that brig. So
Matt Jarvis,
yes,
to round us off.
I mean, like Liv mentioned, I really enjoyed Descent Legends of the Dark. It got very hard towards the end, which kind of like, I don't know if it was just our particular playthrough. I wrote up a full review of it. There were some elements of the app that I think are, at least when I was playing quite early, were not entirely like finished, and some things broke a little bit, and I don't know whether that affected our playthrough. But we were fine until kind of like 3/4 of the way through, and then suddenly the difficulty spike meant that we lost like half a dozen or a dozen games in a row, which was a bit of a kind of flat note to end on that game. But otherwise, I think like everything you said, Liv, like I agree with. Like I really like that world. I love the way it looks. I think just the experience of setting up this big 3D level and then having the companion app kind of deliver these story bits and kind of dynamic events is really, really good. Which I didn't expect, because I've never really cared much about the Descent world of Terranoff before. And it got me to actually invest in those characters and care about what was happening. So
essentially, even though we only played a preview build of it, Wills, I feel like this is what the Divinity board game should have been.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't play the full version of that.
Yeah.
But like hearing what Descent does, I just feel like Descent the kind of game that I'd want to play if I wanted a board game version of Divinity.
Yeah, it's really cool. But it wasn't my game of the year, because my game of the year was Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile, which means once again Cole Worley has done it, because Root is maybe my favorite game of all time.
It's the best game ever made.
Is right up there.
Bloody hell.
Oath, I think, really follows on from that. Oath is, I think, just like one of those games that I just think about all the time. Like I played it a lot for the review. I was just playing it like every night, like a couple of games. Like I played it with just me and my wife. I played it in bigger groups. And I never grew tired of it. And I always just wanted to see what was going to happen next in the kind of world that we'd created for our decisions. And I think it is a fascinating, like, I think it is genuinely unlike another game I have played in the way that it has like slight elements of like legacy games like Pandemic Legacy, but it just keeps rolling forever. Like there's no stop point. The world just keeps turning and evolving. And depending on who wins and how they win, that changes the next game. But it can also change games like multiple sessions down the line, because you can banish, like if someone wins and if someone starts as the the Chancellor, and they lose, and then they have like advisors with them, you have the potential to banish them out of the kingdom for generations. Like they go to a separate deck and they won't necessarily come back up again for a long time. So it's just like this really fascinating sandbox of like ticking gears that makes the world come alive. And I think like it looks incredible because Carl Ferrin's on the art again. Like it's fun to play. It's not as complex, I think, as Root. Like there's a lot to think about, but actually
there's a lot to take on to start with.
Yeah, but the turn stuff is like relatively straightforward. It's more like how each card interacts and how you combine everything in front of you, because every time it's a different combination of denizens and locations and advisors. And yeah, I think it's just like a really fascinating game. But I've said much about it before now, and you can go and watch, like, read my review, watch my review, like read my Game of the Year piece if you want to know more about that. I also played Avatar Legends, which Meehan mentioned earlier. I think it's really, really great RPG. Like Chase has been running our campaign outside of work, and yeah, it's been incredible. Yeah, I think it is, like, Powered by the Apocalypse is probably my favorite RPG system anyway. But I think, like you said, Meehan, like having that layer of Avatar, which is like a very familiar universe, but also I think just like the original creators of the like TV series did such a good job at like giving that world just so much potential for storytelling. It applies really well to an RPG. Things that I wasn't so impressed with, King Domino Origins is fine. Like, I still think it's a good game, but given how much I love Queen Domino, and you know, King Domino's fine also, but I think Queen Domino is like the high point of that series. It's like improved on the formula, and then King Domino Origins kind of just like feels a little bit like Jumping the Shark, which in this case would be like a prehistoric shark because it's set during the Stone Ages.
For some reason,
yeah,
jumping a shark that would appear in a
jumping a
2000s horror
megalodon
film.
Yeah. And it's fine, but it feels like it just tries to add too much to the mixture. Like, I think the part of the reason King and Queen Domino are so good are because they have like a really strong core loop of you're putting down dominoes, but it's a bit like Carcassonne because you're also building your kingdom and trying to make regions of the same connected squares. And King Domino Origins has some cool stuff in the way that volcanoes erupt and you can place fire, which gives you extra points in this case. But then it just feels like, okay, you've got that, which is cool, but then you've got the marketplace of I can't remember what they call them, but cave people, yeah, like cave people that score in different ways, and that feels a bit like a worse version of Queen Domino's buildings. And then you've got like the resources, which are fine, but they're a little bit fiddly, and like I don't think it's like a huge step backwards, but I think it's one of those things where I would never tell someone to play that over Queen Domino. So, and yeah, I think also RPG wise, Mouse Ritter, I think I played this year. It came out a couple of years ago, but I absolutely love the way it looks. Isaac Williams, I think, is the creator, like both designer and illustrator. Like, it just looks gorgeous. It plays really well. It's like an old school RPG, but has this really like tight central gameplay where it's like you don't have a lot of stats to manage. You have this really impressive inventory system where you just put literal like items take up squares. So it's almost like the Resident Evil 4 like attaché case management, but fun.
Whoa!
Yeah, I really like Mouse Ritter. I really like the world. The world is familiar. It's basically Redwall. It's basically, you know, Mice and Mystics. It's little mice on a big adventure kind of thing.
Cute.
But it applies it to like this really good
summer.
old school RPG experience. And it just looks amazing. So I love Mouse Ritter. Yeah, and that's mine, you know. Basically Oath. Just let me talk about Oath some more. But there's plenty of me talking about Oath, whether it's here, you know, like I say, review Game of the Year piece over on Eurogamer. I also wrote about it, so you can find plenty of me chatting about Oath. So
I feel like I've misunderstood the assignment here because I haven't spoken about Heart at all. But Heart is fantastic. It's one of my favorite things about it is the way that it encourages players to take more charge of what happens during the session with the way in which it does your sort of like personal objectives and your group objectives for the sesh. I love the world. I love the art style. I love the hex scroll elements. Like it's a beautiful game. It's a very well written game, and most importantly, the character classes are just some of the most thematic and incredible things I've ever seen. I can't wait to play more of it. But unfortunately, that's pretty much what we have time for today,
that's what
because
we have time for.
we've got an absolutely crammed week getting all of our end of the year content ready for you before we all leave. I will be in next week, but this is everyone else's last week in the office as we're recording this before we head into the holiday season. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. This special Game of the Year edition of the Dicebreaker podcast. If you want to learn more about our actual games of the year, then you can head on over to the list video that is here on YouTube and find the articles on dicebreaker.com. If you want to learn more about the Dicebreaker podcast itself, we've got about 89 episodes or something now, so feel free to go back and listen to those over the Christmas break, but we'll be back next year with some more episodes, of course. But until then, have a wonderful holiday whatever you're celebrating. Have a fantastic end of the year. We will see you in 2022, but until then, have a lovely day. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.